Thanks for clicking on this video, which is for security administrators, and we'll talk you through how you will create IMS users for the AHP program. There is a separate video for security administrators who are going to be creating IMS users for Help to Buy programs. My name is Susan Roberts and I'm the agency's IMS training manager. This video was recorded in September 2016 and reflects IMS at that point. Remember, this is a video, so you might want to use the controls on your video to pause and rewind at any point within the video. So the next slide that you're going to see has no sound over it. So one that you might definitely want to pause on. It'll be on the screen for about 10 seconds. And it's going to be a screen that tells you whereabouts in the video various activities that I'm going to demonstrate to you are. So that will allow you, if you want to fast forward to particular points in the video and the timings that are going to appear on screen. So what is the role of an IMS Security Administrator? Well, a Security Administrator will set up and maintain access to IMS for the users in your own organisation. So HCA doesn't set up or maintain them, you do that yourselves. HCA needs to approve any changes that you make on the system. And those changes could include changing somebody's surname, for example, when somebody gets married, and that would need HCA approval. It might be changing their rights within the system, anything that you do to that user. And everything will ultimately need HCA approval. Just to point out that you cannot change one user into another. So somebody leaves, we wouldn't approve a change to both a first name and a surname. At the same time, we would reject that change. As a security administrator, part of your role is to ensure that your users in your organisation know to keep their logon details secure and not share them with colleagues. Although you log on with a HC number and then 6 digits, the system translates that into a username, and that will form the audit trail for anything that they process within the system. So really important that people keep their own logon details to themselves. As a security administrator, you can add and change individual user rights in IMS. And in IMS, your rights within the system, what you can do, what you can't do, are known as authorities. Security administrators are the ones who can both delete and suspend users in your organisation in IMS. There is a difference between the two. In terms of delete, you permanently remove the user. In terms of suspend, that would be when you make their ID inactive on a temporary basis. So for example, if somebody goes on maternity leave, you would, as good practice, suspend their ID when they are on leave. The other thing that security administrators have always been able to do is to reset users' passwords. However, please be aware that users now can reset their own passwords. The way that they would do that is they would go to log on, they would put their user ID into IMS in the log on window. The middle button then is password options. So they click on that and the window expands, and then they need to click on the change password button. And what that will do is it will generate an email for them that will allow them to reset their password. It isn't, as some of you may be familiar with, an Oracle Solaris email anymore with a temporary password. The email is different and takes the user to a place where they can set their own password within the system. As a security administrator, if you're logged on as that, you can't input or submit requests for funding or do anything to do with claiming grant for a scheme. However, people who are security administrators can also be organisation users, but they'll need a separate ID for each role within the system. So one of the common errors that we get users contacting us about is saying that IMS won't let me do this task. And when we actually question the user and find out who they're logged on as, we sometimes find that they're actually logged on with a security administrator ID, not their organisation user IDs. And as I've mentioned above, security administrators can't do anything to do with inputting data within the system around claiming of a grant or processing that in any shape or form. Now, one of the things that I do when I've got multiple users for training, where I've got security administrator and I've got users, is I reset the theme on my screen so that I have two very different colours. And there are three themes to choose from that I will show you later on in this video. That just helps me remember whether I'm logged on as the user or whether I'm logged on as the security administrator. So what is the role of an IMS organisational user in terms of AHP and SOAHP? So they will be inputting and submitting requests for funding. So the terms that are used in IMS for that are partnerships, offers, and offer lines. Somebody will need to also sign off and set payment processing responsibility within IMS, but that's only done once at the start of a programme. Just for those of you that have seen IMS before and been around using the system for a number of years, you'll have previously been used to funding conditions needing to be signed off within the system. From the 15-18 contract onwards, that has been built into the contract, and there's no longer a requirement to sign off funding conditions in IMS on an annual basis. Organisation users also ensure that any changes in forecasts on your sites are reflected in IMS promptly, and that's right through from acceptance of an offer by HCA through to completion of the final schemes. And you will find that in the profiles and schemes sections of IMS as appropriate to what the changes are. Organisational users will also input and submit confirmations of schemes in IMS, so that's your starting your grant confirmations, and input and submit payment requests within the system. And finally, they will submit officer certificates in advance of quarterly reviews as per contract. So how do you go about getting a new IMS Security Administrator set up? Well, firstly, it's important to maintain at least one Security Administrator, ideally more, at all times, as it's only your security administrators that can change your users' authorities within IMS. So say you're the sole security administrator. You go on holiday and you have a user who wants to submit a payment claim, but they don't have the authorities to submit a payment claim. That payment claim would have to sit in the system until you return from leave and were able to change the authorities. Or alternatively, the organisation would need to get additional security administrators set up. So you might as well get that in place now. That if you want to change security administrators, there is some paperwork that needs to be filled in, and I will show you that shortly. So that paperwork you will find on the HCA website. And what you do from the top of the page is you would click on Funding Programmes, then Investment Management System, Access Guidance and Support. Then under Documents, you would select Investment Management System, How to Register. On that page, there are two documents, and you would either fill in just the first of those to register new security administrators, or if you needed to, you can also fill in a form to change your authorised signatory. So I'll now take you to the HCA website and demonstrate what I've just spoke about. Okay, so I'm now on the HCA website. As I said before, first thing you do is click on Funding Programmes, and it's at the top of the page. So then I need to scroll down to Investment Management System. So Investment Management System, Access, Guidance and Support. Let me click that. And then you will see, as I scroll down it again, Documents, Investment Management System, How to Register. Okay, and again, scroll down, and this is where you will see the two documents. So the first document is for you to confirm or create authorized security administrators within the system. However, one of the things that you're asked to do as part of that is that the authorized signatory is asked to sign that. So it may be that your authorized signatory has changed, in which case you would need to complete the authorized signatory form. So let me go first of all into the confirmation of authorized security administrators. So I'll open the file. Okay, so as I scroll down, organization name and code, then the first thing we're asked for is confirmation of the signature of the authorized signatory. So obviously that needs to be a handwritten signature, not an electronic signature. And then underneath you will see there is space for one primary security administrator and up to 3 secondary security administrators. They both have the same role within IMS, but any changes in password or anything like that, the primary security administrator will get that notification. So you would complete that, print it off, or fill it in by hand, and then get it signed by your authorized signatory. So let me go to the authorized signatory form. Now, this one has quite a bit of information at the start of it, explaining the process for you. So first 2 pages talk about that, and obviously you can read that at your leisure. So the first thing to say about this form, and it is at near the bottom of the form, is that this form needs to be on your headed paper. Okay, so not printed on plain paper, printed on headed paper. So you enter your organization details, and then it is signed by your authorized signatory. And the information at the start talks about who that would normally be. So now I'm going to look at the authorities that can be given to AHP or SOAHP organisational users. And first thing to say is that in the table that you're going to see, everything is going to have RP in it. But depending on your organisation, rather than RP, it could say URB. URB, unregistered body, RP, registered provider. The first thing before I look at the actual authorities and activities themselves to mention is that in a number of cases you will see authorities are being split as input and separately as submit, and that is because of the way that some organisations work. So on the top one, for instance, which is about bidding, we've got an input bids and we've also got a submit bids authority. So you might find users who you just give input bids to and others that you give both input and submit to. So let's look at the activities in turn. So first of all is the one that I've just looked at, which is bidding. So creating and submitting offers and offer lines within IMS. The relevant authorities are RP input bids and RP submit bids. Once your physical contract has been signed off, so your paper contract, it will need to be signed off within IMS. And as an organisation, you will need to set up who is responsible for payment processing in IMS. That's a one-off at the start of a programme. To be able to do that in IMS, somebody within your organisation needs the authority RP partnership sign-off. One that we often get at the start of a new round of allocations, that people try and do things in IMS and can't because their partnership hasn't been signed off within the system. In terms of updating approved allocations prior to claims, submitting officer certificates, start on site and practical completion data, there are a number of different authorities for that. So first of all, they would need the bidding authorities that are shown above. So the RP input bids, RP submit bids. But to change dates, they would need maintained forecasts, provider offer profile, because you don't change your offer lines once they'll be done. Everything is done within the profile part of the system. And then separately, there are input schemes and submit scheme authorities. Again, because you might want to split that responsibility out. In terms of claiming the actual payment on a scheme, there are two authorities for that: input claims and submit claims. One thing you may want access to within IMS, and would certainly recommend it, is access to the program management reports that are now within the system, known as provider reports. To access those, you need the authority RP provider reports. Now, you've obviously accessed this video via YouTube. On YouTube, there is also a video all about provider reports and what, as a security administrator, you would need to do to give somebody access to them, and how a user in your organization would run those reports. If you're in a multi-partner partnership, then you may also need the authority RP jump facility. And that will depend on what you've set under the payment processing and how you're going to be accessing schemes. If you're accessing them schemes via the profiles, you don't need the RP jump facility. But if you're going to access them via the schemes menu, you would need the jump facility. In terms of RCGF input and submission, if that's relevant to you, there are two authorities: input RCGF return and submit RCGF return, and the same for DPF, input DPF return and submit DPF return. So finally, compliance audit. That has its own separate guidance, which will tell security administrators exactly what they need to do, because things are slightly different within there. So there are three authorities for compliance audit, but they are effectively mutually exclusive. You would have one of them, not all of them. So the first one is RP Compliance Audit Provider, and then the same authority with view only. Now, the guidance on compliance audit will explain the details between those. In terms of your independent auditor, they would need the RP Compliance Audit Independent Auditor authority, but they would also need something that's new within IMS, which is a role. So when you log on to IMS now to set up users and change their authorities, you will notice that there are three options at the top. So after authorities, there is roles, and currently roles are only being used for compliance audit. So you would go in, and when you create that user, you would also, for the independent auditor only, add the independent auditor role to them. So I'm now going to look at creating an organisational user in IMS. So the next time you see my screen, I will be logged on as a security administrator in an organisation. So I'm now logged into IMS. And I said before, when I was looking at security administrators and users, that sometimes if you've got both IDs, it's useful to change the colour of the screen of one of those using themes, so that instantly you know when you log on whether you're security administrator or your user just by the colour that the screen gives you. So if you want to do that, it's Tools and then Themes. And the theme that has the most contrast to the grey Native XP, which is the default, is the Lunar Blue theme. So let me click on that and save it. And you will see that my screen has now changed in colour totally to a blue colour. So very easy now from that visual recognition when I've logged on that it's different to my other account. Let me reset it and back to where it was. So themes. Now there is another theme. So we've had Lunar Blue, we've seen XP. The Visual Studio theme is also grey. So very hard to tell the difference between the native XP. So click on Save. So I'm now going to go into the Security module and I'm going to create a new user. So let me click on Security. And then the only parts of this system that you're probably going to use are the View and Maintain. So let's click on Maintain. And we're going to do Organisation Users. Okay, so it populates some information on this side of the screen. It's automatically filled in your organisation code and organisation name. If you wanted to find all your users, you could from this part of the system, but we're going to add a new user, and to do that, bottom right hand corner of the screen, click on the Add New button, and a new window is opened for us. So we need to add the name, so it's Joseph Blogs, and he's going to be j.blogs@a.co.uk. Obviously, I'm using dummy email addresses here, so please don't try and email Joseph. One thing to say that if the emails don't match when you click off here, the red boxes will stay there. So let me click on another box. Okay, it's identified that I've made a difference in them. And what I can see is that that one doesn't have the extra S in it. So let me click off again after having changed that. You can see now that it's accepted that change and the two email addresses are the same. Now the next box, the incident number, is an optional box. If, for instance, your IT were setting up IDs for you, they could put one of their own incident numbers in there. When you've finished making your changes, click on the Save button. So it'll ask you, do you want to add authorities? Well, I'm going to say no, because what I want to do later is look at adding authorities to a user or changing the authorities that they've got. So let me click on No. It identifies the change request has been created, but it doesn't say that it's Joseph Blogs. It says it's the provider user and gives the user ID that will be used for Joseph. So click on the OK button. Okay, and I'm taken back to the screen I was on before, but this time it's included all the users in the organisation there. I'm using a training organisation that I use during training. So let me scroll down the screen. And one thing that you'll notice is that Joseph doesn't appear on that list of users. Joseph's ID won't appear on that list until his user ID has been approved by HCA. So that's common to any changes that you make within the system. They all need to be approved by HCA. So you change somebody's authorities until it's been approved in IMS by HCA. Those new authorities are not active within the system. So the next thing I'm going to look at doing in IMS is adding and changing authorities for an organisation user. So the changes that were input to create Joseph Blogs as a user have now been approved within the system. So I'm now going to go back into IMS and the security module, find Joseph and add him some of the authorities that he may need. So I'm now back in IMS, having approved the changes as a staff member to Joseph's ID. So he's now an official user, and we will see that within the system. I'm now going to add some authorities to him. So I'm going to click on Maintain, Organisation Users. And this time I'm going to find all the users, and we'll see Joseph on that list. So there he is, Joseph's on that list. So I'm going to look at adding authorities to Joseph. But before I do that, let me point out the buttons that are appearing at the end of the screen, the Actions button. So clicking on I would give me Joseph's full details, so the email address and everything that I input when he was created. The next one is Edit, which is to allow you to make any changes to Joseph's ID. The X button allows you to delete Joseph's ID. The key, reset his password. And finally, last button here is suspend users. So that would be if somebody had gone on a period of extended leave. Now I do have a user who's been set up in this system whose ID has been suspended. So let me scroll down to that user. Okay, so you can see instantly on this line, test as a user, that the buttons are different. The reason for that is that this user's ID has been suspended. So let's click on the button that's there, reactivate user. So if I wanted to turn that user's account back on as active, that is the button that I would click on to do that. So let me now go back to Joseph and edit Joseph's account to give him some authorities in IMS. So click on the edit button. And I'm going to go to authorities. Okay, so there are two windows on the page. The first one has a list of available authorities in a scroll box, and then selected authorities. Now you can see currently there are no items in the box selected authorities. So let me click on some authorities to give to Joseph. So he's going to do some program management. So provider reports would help with that. And you can see as I've clicked on that, the button here has changed and it's become an add button. Let me click on that. Okay, and that effectively transfers from one list to another list. I'm also going to allow Joseph to input bids. But whereas before I clicked on one at a time to add, I can click on multiples. So, and input schemes, and click on add. So I just shift and clicked to select that second one, and you can see that they appear on that side. So I click on save when I'm done, and it identifies that a change request has been created for the user on IMS. So if for any reason you realise that you'd made changes on the system to users that were incorrect, then you can go back into security and check what is still pending in the system. So to do that, you can click on Process Changes. You will only be able to see organisation users. So let's click on that. And then if you click on My Pending, you will see a list of anything that is pending in the system. So you can see here that the changes that I've made to Joseph Blog's account as yet have not been approved by HCA. So if I realise that I've input those in error, what I can do is action and reject that, and that will reject the changes that I've made. So let me do that now. So it says, are you sure you want to reject it? So yes, let's put yes. Authorization complete. So that has removed any of the changes that we had just submitted for Joseph. So I'm now going to look at deleting or suspending users from IMS. Now there is a difference between delete and suspend. So delete removes the user permanently. So that would be somebody who has left your organization. Suspend still keeps their ID active but prevents them from logging on. So that might be somebody who's on maternity leave or long-term sick, who obviously isn't using the system at that point, so their access should be suspended as good practice. So I'm now going to go back into IMS and look at that. So back into security, if you aren't there already. So maintain organisation users. And I'm going to find all my users. And then I'm going to scroll down to find trainee 9. Okay, trainee 9 is the last one on the list. So let's select that line so that I know that I'm on the right line. Very important that you're going to delete or suspend the right user. And before I talked about the buttons that are on this part of the screen. So the last one was suspend user. So say trainee 9 has gone on mat leave or extended leave, and I want to suspend that user's access. Okay, so it wants to know a reason. And when I come off that, I can then click on save, and that is sent to HCA. Obviously, you can reactivate that when the user comes back from mat leave. So that one is currently sitting with HCA, awaiting approval of that change. So now to password resets and who can activate those. So first of all, your first log on to IMS is to Citrix. If your organisation needs the Citrix password reset for any reason, then one of your security administrators needs to contact the HCA service desk on either the phone number or the email that's shown on screen. So the security administrator needs their password reset. They can now do that themselves. So they would go to log on to IMS. They would click on their user ID and enter their ID. And then they would click on the password options button and then the change password option. And that would then look to send them an email where there will be links within that email to click on and reset the password according to the rules that are within the system. That is all now web based. You don't need to be in Citrix to do that physical reset of the password. Similarly, if an organisation user needs the password reset, then the user can now do that themselves. Or as a security administrator, you can also request that within IMS. Both result in the same endpoint of the user being sent an email to click on a link again to reset their password. In both cases, when a password is reset, the user gets confirmation that their password has been reset. So how do you go about resetting an organisation user's password? So let me go back into IMS. So I'm now going to look at how you would reset a user's password and system. So if you go into security and then maintain and select organisation users. If I then click on find to find all my users, my list appears, and if I scroll down, I will reset the password of trainee 6. So first of all, click on trainee 6 to select the line to make sure that you're always going to click on the right one by highlighting them. Then if you move across to the buttons at the end, the action buttons, one of them's a key. If you click on that key button, that is a reset password button. Okay, so it's then going to ask you to add your admin password, which you'd enter there. Now, when I click on the OK button here, it won't work quite the same way as yours is going to work because I'm working in a training environment. When you click on the OK button, you will get a message telling you the user has been sent an email with information on how to reset their password, effectively a couple of links that they can click on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you to that email, an example of that email. So next time you see my screen, I will be logged into my emails. Okay, so I'm now in the email, or a similar email to the one that the user would get if they reset their password. First thing to point out is that it's from Homes and Communities Agency, but it's from a no reply inbox. It will have the user's email address underneath. It's addressed to the actual user themselves, and it's identified their username in the brackets at the top of the email. It doesn't show all their username, just the last 3 characters of it. Mine's a staff ID, so it's a different format to yours, has my initials at the end of it. To reset their password, they would click on the Change Password button or the link below. They both have the same effect. So click on the Change Password button, and we're taken to a new screen, web-based, don't need to be in Citrix at the same time as it, and we're going to reset that password. So it tells us first that the password needs to be between 8 and 30 characters in length and contain at least 3 of the following. So an uppercase letter, a lowercase letter, a number, and a symbol. So if I click on the first box and I enter my new password, second one, and confirm that password. It will do a check when I click on the Change Password button that they match. And then I get a message on screen saying that my password has been successfully reset. You will also receive an email telling you the same thing. So thanks very much for watching this video. We hope you found it helpful. If you have any feedback on the video, please feel free to email it to our IMS training inbox, the address to which is on screen. Thank you.